Hello class. In this video, I will be discussing the topic cash and cash equivalents. So as I've mentioned before, this is the first one-line item that we can find in a properly classified statement of financial position. So our objective in this particular lesson is to be able to identify items which should be included in this particular one-line item, cash and cash equivalents. Also, we will be accounting for Patikash fund. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to account for Patikash fund appropriately or correctly. So let us start. So let us start with the definition of cash. So ano ba yung cash? No? So cash includes money and any other negotiable instrument. So pag sinabi nating negotiable instrument, examples niyan are checks, mga bank drafts, money orders. So yung nature ng negotiable instrument is that when you are going to present it for payment, it will be accepted, and even banks will accept it for deposit and immediate credit. So yun yung i-consider natin as cash. So it will not include only the coins and bills, but also other negotiable instruments that is accepted by or that is acceptable by bank for deposit and immediate credit. Okay, so one of the attributes or characteristics for an item to be considered as part of cash and cash equivalent, so for a cash item to be included in the caption cash and cash equivalent, it should be unrestricted. Okay, so according to PAS 1, an entity shall classify an asset as current when the asset is cash or cash equivalent unless it is restricted to settle a liability for more than 12 months after the end of the reporting period. So ibig sabihin, class, that as long as hindi restricted ang cash para gamitin sa operations within the next 12 months at the end of the reporting period, then that item can be considered as cash, which is included in the caption cash and cash equivalent. So generally, again, to be reported as cash, an item must be unrestricted in or for use in the current operations of the entity. So what are the examples of cash item which is included in the caption cash? So cash includes, or cash items includes, your cash on hand. So yung cash on hand, these are those cash which are not yet deposited. So pwedeng mga undeposited cash collections, mga cash items awaiting deposit. So it could include customers' checks na kunyari meron kang collection and the customer paid through checks or in the form of check. So cashier's or manager's check, traveler's checks, bank drafts, and money orders. So all of this actually are mga negotiable instruments as long as it is not defective, it's not post-dated, and walang walang defects yung mga items na to. So if these items are awaiting for deposit on hand, so nasa premises pa ng company natin, then that is considered as cash on hand. So another is yung cash in bank. So ano ba yung cash in bank? Of course, ito yung mga cash na nakatago na sa bangko. So in the form of demand deposit, Other term for demand deposit is checking account. So actually, these are those, pag sinabi nating demand deposit or checking account, ito yung mga accounts wherein kapag nag-withdraw ka ay kailangan mo mag-issue ng cheque. So another is savings deposit. So in the next nga mga lessons will be differentiating, no? Ano bang kaibahan ng demand deposit tsaka savings deposit. So basically, ang kaibahan ng dalawang to is that nasa withdrawal, no? So kapag nag-withdraw ka in a demand deposit, so you will be channeling it or you'll be coursing it through a check issuance. Whereas pag savings deposit yan, pag meron kang withdrawal, of course, mag-fill up ka ng withdrawal slip. So another part of the cash caption is yung cash funds. So ano ba yung mga cash funds na? So ito yung cash na sinet aside natin for a certain purpose. So take note, for it to be considered as part of cash, the purpose of why you are setting aside this cash is dapat current, no? Yung purpose niya. So ano yung mga examples ng cash funds na yan? Na current yung purpose. So, una, yung Patikash fund. Second, payroll fund. No, pang sweldo. Dividend fund. Travel fund. Interest fund. Tax fund for non-current purposes. Okay, so, for non-current purposes, it could be a sinking fund, preferred stock redemption fund, contingent fund, insurance fund, no, fund for the construction of properties. So again, class, no, for us to consider an item as part of cash and cash equivalent, so dapat yung fund na yon ay for current purpose. So in this given items here, no, yung mga enumerated items here, only Patikash fund, payroll fund, dividend fund, travel fund, interest fund, and tax fund can be included in the caption cash and cash equivalent. So others, like ito mga for non-current purposes like sinking fund, preferred stock redemption fund, mga contingent fund, insurance fund, fund for construction properties, for construction of properties. So ito mga funds na to, we are going to report this as other investments. Okay. So, yun yung cash, no? So, basically, for an item to be considered as part of the caption cash, dapat unrestricted siya. And, if it is in the form of a fund, then dapat ang fund na yon should be for current purpose. Kasi pag non-current yung purpose, then you cannot include them in the caption cash. Let us now proceed to cash and cash equivalents. So, ano ba yung mga items naman, no, nakasama sa caption na cash equivalents? So, firstly, let us define what a cash equivalent is. So, based on this definition here, it is a short-term, highly liquid investments that are readily convertible into cash and so near, no, their maturity that they present insignificant risk of changes in value because of changes in interest rates. So, take note, no, cash equivalents are investments. So, basically, investment siya, pero very liquid, no, highly liquid. And anytime that you are going to sell it, anytime that you're going to convert it into cash, every time you realize it into cash, then there is a lesser chance na hindi mo siya mabenta, and there's a lesser chance also, or there's a lesser risk na bababa yung value niya. So, yan. So, less risky ito na mga investments. And, as mentioned, dapat yung sinasabi niyang so near ang kanyang maturity para meron lang insignificant risk of changes and values. So, yung so near na yan, no, define dito. For a certain investment to be considered as cash equivalent, they must be acquired 3 months before maturity. So, for them to qualify as cash equivalent, dapat nabili mo, you purchased it 3 months prior to maturity date. So, take note class na in this particular requirement, no, hindi magmamatter actually yung original na hindi magmamatter yung original na term, no, ng investment na to. Say for example, no, meron kang 3 years na treasury bill na binili, no? So for example, this 3 years treasury bill will mature on March 31, 2021. Say for example, you purchased it ngayon, February 9, 2021. So if you're going to count, no, the number of days or the remaining months before the maturity of this treasury bill, it is less than 3 months na. So from February 9 until March 31, if you're going to consider the number of days, so more or less, hindi, less than na lang siya ng 90 days. So if that's the case, then even if such investment, no, was previously, ang term niya previously is for long term kasi nga 3 years, but then since the entity purchased it 3 months, no, prior to before its maturity date, then that investment can qualify, no, or can be classified as cash equivalent. So again, hindi magmamatter ang original term ng investment, but what is important is the date of purchase until the maturity date of your investment. So that should be 3 months or less. So otherwise, such investment cannot be qualified or cannot be classified as cash equivalent. Okay? So these are the examples of cash equivalents. So ito, no, yung sinabi ko kanina, treasury bill na 3 months na lang, no, 3 months na, even if its original term is 3 years, but it was purchased 3 months before the maturity date. So this particular treasury bill here can be classified as cash equivalent. So ibang isa pa naman yun kapag, example, pinurchased mo siya, yung originally, if this treasury bill was issued originally, no, tapos yung term niya ay 3 years, so maturity date niya is after 3 years pa, so that particular investment cannot really be classified, no, or will not qualify as cash equivalent. So another example of a cash equivalent is a time deposit na ang term ay 3 months. So, are you familiar with time deposit? So, ito siya. You can do this, no, in a bank. So, you're going to deposit your money sa bangko, and then for a certain period of time, hindi mo siya pwedeng i-withdraw, no? Kasi meron naka-specify na term, no, kung kailan mo lang siya pwedeng ma-withdraw. Although of course, if you will need the money, you can pre-terminate it naman, no? Kaso nga lang, yung interest na inagrihan nyo before, hindi na siya mag-a-apply, no? So yung normal na lang or regular interest rate na lang ang mag-a-apply. Kasi pag time deposit class, mas malaki ang interest, no, na ibibigay ng bangko or financial institution compared to a regular savings deposit. So again, no, dapat ang time deposit should be 3 months or less lang ang kanyang term, no, para ma-qualify siya as cash equivalent. Another is money market instrument, which of which the term should also be 3 months. So again, what will matter really is the date of purchase until the date of maturity. Dapat ay 3 months or less for it to be classified or for it to qualify as cash equivalent. Okay, so let us proceed to the next topic. So na-define na natin ano yung cash. Na-define na natin kung ano yung cash equivalent. Now, let us proceed to measurement. So after definition, let's proceed to measurement. So paano ba mini-measure yung cash? No? At what amount are we going to value our cash? So una, generally speaking, cash, no, is measured at face amount or tinatawag natin na face value. So what you see is what you get. So kung magkano yung amount na nakikita mo, for example, if that's 1,000, then you record it at face amount, no? You record it at 1,000. So kung nakita mo 10,000, if the transaction is or the amount is 10,000, then you record it at 10,000. So again, we are valuing cash at face amount or face value. Now, in case, no, meron kang deposit sa bangko and then that particular bank or financial institution holding your funds unfortunately filed bankruptcy or had a financial difficulty, so declare ng bank holiday. So how do we measure, no, our cash na nasa isang bangko na na-close na? So for that type of cash, no, if your cash is in the hands of a financial institution who filed bankruptcy or under financial difficulty, then that cash shall be measured at estimated recoverable amount. So take note, class, na kung ang bangko ay magsasara, no, magpa-file sila ng bank holiday, for example, each depositor is insured up to 500,000 pesos na sa PDIC. So that is why it's better to put your money in different banks because yung insurance ng PDIC is only up to 500,000 pesos per depositor. So kunyari, sa itong bangko na to nagsara and meron kang deposit na 1 million pesos, so ibig sabihin yung 500,000 pesos mo lang yung mare-recover mo from PDIC, yung another 500,000 will be considered na as your loss, no? Magiging charge to experience mo yung 500,000. So kung marami kayong pera, na you have to be mindful to not to put your money in one basket, no? So that is why dapat i-spread natin. Although of course there are pros and cons, no, kapag sobra naman yung pagka-spread or sobrang kadami ng bangko na mini-maintain mo, kasi baka malito ka rin, no? So you just have to consider the practicality of maintaining the number of banks. And kasi 'di ba, pag maraming bangko, marami kang i-supervise din. So marami kang i-monitor, no? So if that's the case, kung marami kang i-monitor, so might as well limit na lang din yung number of banks. So ang importante na lang din, class, is you can assess or you are going to deposit to a bank which is reputable, na that you can really test yung bangko na hindi siya shaky in terms of their finances, kasi dapat stable, no, yung bangko na pagdedepositohan mo ng pera mo. Okay? So kasi pag hindi stable, may tendency talaga na baka mag-file ng bankruptcy. So pag nag-file ng bank holiday ang bangko, tapos meron ka deposit doon, 1 million for example. So, yung 500,000 lang yung mare-recover mo. So, next we have cash in foreign currency. So, example, no, meron kang deposit sa bangko, no, dollar deposit sa bank. So, at what amount are we going to recognize or at what amount are we going to measure that cash in foreign currency? So, sabi niya dito, it shall be measured at the current exchange rate. So, paano ba natin i-determine yung current exchange rate na yan? Say, for example, class, yung ating reporting date ay December 31, 2020. Say, for example, meron kang $1,000 na deposit sa bangko, no? So, ang gagawin mo, yung $1,000 na yan, i-multiply mo sa current exchange rate or yung exchange rate nung reporting date, which is December 31. Say, for example, noong December 31, ang dollar ay 49 pesos, no? Dollar to peso na exchange rate. You have 49 pesos. So, ibig sabihin, your $1,000 will be multiplied at 49 pesos. So, you will be reporting your cash in foreign currency at 49,000. So, meaning there's a need for us to translate itatranslate natin ang ating dollar into peso. This is aligned, no, to the concept of monetary unit, na if you can still recall, na dapat meron tayong common denominator na gagamitin when we are going to report, no, when we are going to prepare a report. So, after measurement class, alam na natin kung at what amount are we going to recognize, no? At what amount are we going to measure our cash. So, depende kung unsa nga klase nga cash ang naata. So, let us now proceed to the presentation, no? Financial statement presentation. So, ibig sabihin nito, how are we going to present the items, no? The cash items in our financial statement. So, una-una sa listahan ay yung mga deposits in foreign countries. So, take note that deposits in foreign countries, say for example, meron kang deposito sa Japan, kasi meron kang business doon, for example, that deposit in foreign countries, no, shall be shown as part of cash and cash equivalents in the current asset if it is not subject to any foreign exchange restriction. So, take note class, dapat walang foreign restriction. Otherwise, no, kapag merong restriction, if it is subject to restriction and material and amount, then they should be classified separately, no, as a non-current asset and the restriction clearly indicated. So, ibig sabihin, kapag merong restriction, merong foreign exchange restriction, yung deposito na yun, hindi mo siya pwedeng i-report as part of your cash and cash equivalent. So, only kapag walang foreign exchange restriction, pwede nating i-report as cash and cash equivalent. Tapos, kung merong restriction, then i-separate natin siya, report natin siya separately as non-current asset. So, in the notes to financial statements, you have to indicate there the type of or the nature of the restriction. Another is the cash fund. So, sabi natin kanina, generally pag cash fund, so again, these are cash set aside for a certain purpose. Na? So, kapag ang purpose ng cash fund na yan ay current operations, then it shall be shown as part of the cash and cash equivalents. Say, for example, your Patikash fund, your tax fund, your dividend fund. So, these are for current operations. And therefore, those cash set aside for current operations shall be reported as part of cash and cash equivalent. So, for those naman, cash funds, no, which are set aside for purposes na non-current, no, mga non-current purposes, they are classified as non-current assets. No, so, for example, those reserved for the acquisition or construction of non-current assets. So, for example, no, meron plano yung company na mag-expand ng planta, no? Meron siyang expansion ng kanyang plant. So, tapos pinag-iipunan niya. So, yung cash na sinet aside mo pang construct ng plant will be presented, no? Will be presented as part of non-current assets. So, hindi siya pwedeng mapunta doon sa cash and cash equivalent na caption. Or, say for example, meron kang sinking fund. No, yung sinking fund ay cash yan set aside para may pambayad ka ng mga long-term na utang. So, specifically, bonds, for example, meron kang bonds payable, tapos kasama doon sa inyong agreement na dapat meron siyang sinking fund na i-set up. So, kung ganun, you have to set up a sinking fund, and that sinking fund should be reported as part of your non-current assets. Just take note, class, no, that the classification of your fund will depend on the nature, kung ano yung paggagamitan mo, ano yung purpose mo. Say for example, no, sabi natin generally, kapag current yung purpose, magiging part ang cash fund doon sa cash and cash equivalent. Pag hindi naman current yung purpose, then i-report mo siya as non-current asset. Now, say for example, initially, meron kang sinking fund, meron kang sinking fund na sinet aside mo, pambayad sa bonds payable mo, which is ang term niya ay 5 years. So, for 5 years, you've been setting aside cash, no, your sinking fund, for the purpose of repaying your bonds payable. Say for example, nasa 4th year ka na, no? So, gawa ka ng financial statements sa 4th year na ng term ng iyong bonds payable. So, if that is the case, no, yung bonds payable mo na originally, ang term ay 5 years, so after 4 years, meron na lang natira na 1 year before its maturity date. So, if that's the case, then your bonds payable now is no longer non-current liability, but it becomes now a current liability. Bakit? Kasi, yung bonds payable mo ay magju-due na or babayaran mo na within the next 12 months after the reporting date. So, if that is the case, class, yung related na sinking fund na pambabayad mo doon sa iyong bonds payable ay magiging for current purpose na rin. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? So, ibig sabihin that after 4 years, the classification of your bonds payable will become current na. From non-current liability, magiging current liability siya. So, since naging current liability na ang bonds payable mo, yung related sinking fund na sinet aside mo na pambayad ng utang mo, magiging current na din. So, again, pagka 4 years, pag gumawa ka ng financial statements, on the 4th year, no, of the term of that bond, bonds payable mo, current liability. Yung sinking fund mo will become also a current asset. So, this time, it will become part of your cash and cash equivalent kasi nga, ang purpose niya na ngayon ay pambabayad na ng current liability mo. Now, I hope that is clear, no? So let us now proceed again to the financial statement presentation. So I have cash and cash equivalents. How do we present it in your statement of financial position? So take note that it is shown as the first item among the current assets if unrestricted and used for current operations. Otherwise, they are presented separately as non-current items. As to details, ililista mo or i-include mo yan sa notes to financial statements. So, for cash and foreign currency, so as we have mentioned kanina, it should be translated into Philippine pesos using the current exchange rate. So, if your current exchange rate, magre-refer ka doon sa exchange rate nung araw kung kailan ka magre-report or your reporting date. Say, for example, December 31, 2020. So, kung ano yung exchange rate ng araw na yon, yun yung gagamitin mong pang-translate ng foreign currency mo into Philippine pesos. Next, we have special items of cash and its FS presentation. So, ano yung mga special items na to? Una, we have bank overdraft. Ano ba yung bank overdraft? So, sabi niya, it's a credit or negative balance in the bank account of the depositor resulting from an issuance of a check that exceeds the amount of the deposit. So, basically, di ba class, yung ating deposito sa bangko, banks will treat that as a liability. So, sa atin asset yun, sa kanilang part, liability yun. Now, kung sobra na yung mga withdrawal natin, nag-issue tayo ng cheque, tapos wala na palang laman yung bank account natin. So, mag-overdraft siya. So, ibig sabihin, somehow meron kang deficit amount. In the Philippines, it's not allowed. Hindi siya allowed in the Philippines. But, in some cases, or theoretically speaking, possible siya yung sobra ka na nag-issue ng check tapos hindi mo na namalayan or hindi mo na monitor na baka kulang na pala yung amount na dineposit mo sa bangko or yung balance na meron ka sa bangko. So, anong ruling kapag merong bank overdraft? What is our treatment for that bank overdraft? So, as a rule, an overdraft shall be classified as a current liability and not offset against current accounts with positive or debit balance. So, ibig sabihin nito na kapag may bangko, meron kang account na nag-overdraft, nag-negative balance, hindi po pwedeng i-offset mo sa mga balanse mo sa other banks. See, for example, Bank 1, meron kang balanse na 100,000. Sa Bank 2, meron kang negative 10,000 or overdraft na 10,000. So, hindi po pwede na i-net out mo yung balanse ng Bank 1 sa balanse ng Bank 2. So, hindi ka pwede mag-report ng 90,000 na net cash. So, what you're going to do is, you report cash at 100,000 and you report separately 10,000 as a liability. Your bank overdraft account is a liability account. So, basic rule in financial accounting, no offsetting of liabilities against asset. So, bawal yan. Hindi po pwede mag-offset ng liability sa asset. So, bawal ang offsetting in financial accounting. No ang asset tsaka ang liability. Pwede pa yung income tsaka expense. It is allowed not to offset income and expense, but it is never allowed to offset liability from an asset. Take note, there's an exception to this rule. Ano yung exception? So, if the overdraft is in a bank where there are other accounts that have a positive balance and those accounts are sufficient to cover the overdraft, then the total cash shall be shown is the net of overdraft. So this is only applicable kapag the same bank. No? Say for example, sa bank 1 or sa bank 2 kung saan meron kang overdraft na 10,000, say for example, meron ka pang isang account na may laman na 50,000. So, separate account, no? So, isang bangko, dalawa for example, yung mini-maintain mo account doon. So, isang balance is negative 10,000. Yung other account, ang balance ay 50,000. So, since the same bank sila, you are allowed to offset, no, and just show the net amount, which is 40,000. So, that is exception to the rule of non-offsetting. Again, that is only if the overdraft, or if you're going to offset the overdraft from the same bank or to the same bank. So, another special item is this compensating balance agreement. So, what is this compensating balance? It is a part of or deposits that a bank can use to offset an existing loan. No, para bang pauutangin ka pero there's a certain amount that the bank will withhold, or meaning the bank will require you to deposit it intact sa bangko. So, hindi mo siya, depende sa agreement ninyo, no? So, compensating balances can also be described as a minimum amount of the deposit that a depositor agrees to maintain, no, in order to guarantee future credit availability. So, in short, para siyang cash na itatabi mo, no, doon sa account mo, which is a result of your agreement, no, of the agreement of the company and the bank. So, take note, class, that this compensating balance is assumed to be legally restricted to withdrawal. So, yun yung assumption natin. No? Pag walang sinabi, tapos may sabi niya compensating balance. So, pag walang sinabi, whether restricted ba siya or hindi. So, we will assume that it is legally restricted. So, kapag legally restricted siya to withdrawal, then we should not include it from cash. No? So, it should be excluded from cash kasi nga legally restricted. So, hindi natin pwedeng gamitin sa current operations. However, if it remains to be unrestricted, say for example, sabi ng bangko, okay, meron kang compensating balance na this much, pero you are free to withdraw it if ever you will need it. So, if that's the case, then it is not restricted by nature. So, pag hindi siya restricted, then it shall be part of your cash. So, pwede mo siyang i-report as part of your cash. Now, kapag legally restricted ang compensating balance mo, the following rule shall be followed. So, if the related loan is short-term, you are going to report that compensating balance as part of the current assets but separate from cash. So, take note pag restricted ang compensating balance and that is related to a short-term loan, then such compensating balance shall be presented as current assets, however, not part of the caption cash and cash equivalent, but from a separate account. So, ibang account siya. If the related loan is long-term, then part of the compensating balance shall be part of the non-current asset as an investment. So, parang magiging other investment siya, non-current asset. So, an informal agreement to maintain a minimum amount of deposit will not be legally restricted and therefore included in cash. So, yung dapat itong compensating balance na to is really a formal agreement na meron talagang pinirmahan, no? Merong agreement, no, ng bangko at saka ng company na this much will be maintained, na this amount of money shall be maintained by the depositor in his deposits, no, with the bank. Okay. So, another special item is yung time deposit. So, for time deposits, so as I've mentioned kanina, ito yung mga bank savings account na that earns interest but not subject to immediate withdrawal or check issuance. So, ang kaibahan nito sa savings nga, as I've mentioned kanina, usually time deposit is or will give higher na interest rate as compared to regular savings deposit. Yun nga lang, hindi mo siya pwedeng ma-withdraw agad-agad, no? Kasi nga, there is a certain term that you have to wait, no? Kung kailan mo siya pwedeng ma-withdraw. See, a notice must be submitted by the depositor for the withdrawal of funds and interest earned shall be forfeited. So, this is in the case kapag ipe-pre-terminate mo ang time deposit. So, pag pre-terminated yung deposit, ibig sabihin, hindi mo hinintay yung term, no? As what you have agreed with the bank. Say, for example, sabi mo 3 months, pero after 1 month pa lang, withdraw mo na. So, therefore, yung supposedly interest rate na higher na naagrihan nyo ng bangko, no, will be forfeited. No? So, ang mag-a-apply na lang na interest rate is yung regular na interest rate ng savings deposit. So, time deposits are excluded from cash because of the restriction on the availability as funds and are classified as investments and shall follow these specific classifications. So, ito, no, yung rule natin. Ang time deposit, no, shall be part of your cash equivalent if the original term is 3 months or less. Kapag ang original term is more than 3 months to 1 year, then it will be presented as part of current assets. However, separate siya, hindi kasama sa cash equivalent. Dapat i-report mo siya as short-term investment. Kapag naman ang term ng iyong time deposit is more than 1 year, then it's considered already as non-current asset. So, specifically, a long-term investment. Okay. So, we have here another item, no? Special item. So, let's try to determine kung paano ba natin ito i-report. No? Ano ba ang accounting ng ganitong klase ng cheque? So, we have undelivered or unreleased check. So, anong klaseng cheque ito, no? So, these are those checks drawn and recorded but not given to the payee before the end of the reporting period. So, example, no? Meron kang prepare na cheque. So, nag-prepare ka na ng cheque noong December 30, for example. Or say, for example, December 29, kasi holiday na ang 30, no? So, December 29, meron ka ng prepare na cheque to a certain payee. Now, ninglabay na lang ang December 31 or naabtan na lang og New Year, no? Nag-January na lang, wala pa nimo siya nahatag sa payee. You're not able to deliver the check to the payee. So, in short, unreleased yung check as of the cut-off date, which is December 31, 2020. So, the question is, ano yung treatment natin doon sa unreleased or undelivered check na yun? So, sabi nito, kasi nga hindi mo siya na-deliver, technically, there is no payment yet, no, na nangyari at the end of the period. So, as of December 31, 2020, hindi ka pa nakapagbayad. So, accordingly, the original entry for the payment should be reversed to restore, no, or to increase the cash balance and the related liability account. So, ano ibig sabihin, class, no? Kapag may nakita kayo doon sa mga items, no, na i-analyze niyo kung kasala ba or hindi. No? So, kapag mayroong undelivered check dyan, the amount of that undelivered check should be included, no, should be added back to your cash balance. Bakit? Kasi nga, technically, hindi ka pa nakapagbayad na as of the cut-off date or as of the reporting period. So, ito yung adjusting entry mo to reflect that adjustment. So, you debit cash. So, there's an increase in your cash. And you credit the accounts payable or any appropriate account. So, depende kung ano yung supposedly binayaran mo, no? Kasi ba nag-issue ka ng check kasi meron kang babayaran. So, since hindi siya na-deliver, what you're trying to do here is just to reverse na yung entry mo nung nag-issue ka ng check, which is of course a debit to accounts payable or any appropriate account and credit cash. So, here, we are trying to set up your cash again, no? Ibabalik natin doon sa iyong record kasi nga hindi na-deliver yung check at the end of the accounting period. Another is company's post-dated check delivered. Ito naman baliktad na. Na-deliver na siya pero post-dated pa. So, ano bang ibig sabihin ng post-dated check? Ibig sabihin, class, itong check na to, no? Na-draw mo na, na-record mo na, binigay mo na sa payee, pero ang date na nakasulat doon ay date after the reporting period pa. Say, for example, again, our reporting period or our cut-off period is December 31, 2020. Say, for example, ginawa mo yung check na yun, no? Inisyo mo yung check na yun noong December 26. So, noong December 26, 2020, nag-issue ka ng check nabigay na sa payee. Kaso lang, yung date ng check ay January 15, 2021. So, that's a post-dated check which is already delivered. Accordingly, the original entry for the payment should be reversed. Bakit i-reverse, no? That is to restore or to increase the cash balance and the related liability account. Kasi technically, hindi ka pa nakapagbayad kasi magiging negotiable lang yung check na inisyo mo pagdating ng January 15 kung kailan ang date ng check. So, if that is the case, again, as of the cut-off period, as of December 31, wala pang bayad na nangyari. So, you're going to reverse your entry. So, you debit cash and your credit accounts payable or any appropriate account. Next is this stale check or check long outstanding. So, ito siya na mangyayari ito sa mga taong marami ang pera, no? Kasi nakalimutan na nila na meron pa pala silang check na hindi pa na-encash. So, ano yung stale check, no? Or long outstanding check. So, these are check not encashed by the payee within a relative long period of time. So, in banking practice, a check becomes stale if not encashed within 6 months from the time of issuance, no? Of course, this is a matter of company policy. Thus, even after 3 months, the company may issue a stop payment order to the bank for the cancellation of the stale check. Pag naging stale yung check class, ang mangyayari ay hindi na siya tatanggapin ng bangko. No? So, hindi na siya magiging negotiable, hindi na siya tatanggapin ng bangko. So, on the part of the issuing company, kapag naging stale na yung check, anong gagawin? So, if the amount of the stale check is immaterial, so hindi naman masyadong malaki, it is simply accounted for as a miscellaneous income. So, you can just debit back your cash and credit miscellaneous income. However, if the amount is material and the liability is expected to continue, parang nakalimutan lang yung ng paying na ipa-encash pero still meron ka pa talagang utang. So, what you have to do is, you just have to restore cash, no? Ibalik lang natin sa ating cash and i-set up natin ulit yung liability. So, ito yung entry na your debit cash and your credit accounts payable in any appropriate account. Okay? So, yun yung mga concepts related to cash and cash equivalents. So, proceed tayo sa illustration. Okay. So, this is your illustration para ma-apply natin yung mga concepts na discuss natin kanina. So in this particular illustration, we have Descendants Company. Ito yung data na pre-provide niya noong December 31, 2020. So ito yung mga items na i-analyze natin kung kasama ba sa caption na cash and cash equivalent or hindi. Okay? So, meron siyang mga items and meron siyang mga additional information dito sa baba. So, ano yung requirement? So, first is to prepare adjusting entry on December 31, 2020. Second is to compute the amount or the total amount of cash and cash equivalent that should be presented on the face of your statement of financial position. So, naging kulang, no? Yung requirement. Basta ang cash and cash equivalent na dapat i-present mo sa iyong statement of financial position. And lastly, explain the presentation of items excluded. No? So, yung mga items na hindi kasama sa caption ng cash and cash equivalent, no? You have to explain kung bakit hindi sila nasama. Okay? So, to address the first requirement, yung adjusting entry, let us check the additional information given. Say, for example, here, the first bullet, check of 250,000 and the payment of accounts payable was dated and recorded December 31, 2020 but mailed to creditors on January 15, 2021. So, etong what kind of check is this, no? Tama na, this is an undelivered check. Na-draw na-record na, kaso lang hindi siya naibigay doon sa payee. So, na-deliver siya, na-mail siya sa mga creditors or sa payee after na sa reporting date, which is January 15 na. So, after na sa December 31. So, ano yung entry natin dito? So, dapat i-reverse natin yung ating entry na ginawa, no? So, what will be your adjusting entry? So, this will be your adjusting entry. So, you are going to debit cash in bank for 250,000 and we credit accounts payable for 250,000. So, you have the effect of increasing your cash in bank balance. Next item. So, next is ito, no? Check of 100,000 dated January 31, 2021 and payment of accounts payable was recorded and mailed December 31, 2020. So, this is an example of a post-dated check, no? Na-record na-deliver na, pero yung date ng check ay January 31 pa. So, hindi pa siya negotiable as of December 31, 2020. So, meaning, wala pa talagang payment na nangyari noong December 31, 2020. So, anong gagawin, no? In your adjusting entry, no, for your post-dated check, ito yung adjusting entry natin. Magde-debit tayo ng cash in bank, credit tayo ng accounts payable to set up again the liability. The third bullet, ito, no? The reporting period is the calendar year. So, ibig sabihin, nag-start siya ng January 1, mag-end siya ng December 31. The cash receipts journal was held open until January 15, 2021, during which time an amount of 450,000 was collected and recorded December 31, 2020. So, remember the time period assumption, di ba? Conscious tayo masyado sa cut-off period. So, since ang ating reporting date ay December 31, tapos yung collection ay nangyari na noong January 15, sa next year na. So, ibig sabihin, mali, no? It is erroneous to record the collection sa December 31, 2020. So, we have to make some correction, no? Para aning iyaang entry atong December 31, 2020 kasi this is erroneous. So, dapat ang collection sa January 15 na i-report, no, i-record dili sa December 31. So, ano yung entry niyan? So, we debit sales, no, to record or um, remove, no, or to de-recognize or to correct the error made in 2020. So we debit sales of 450,000 and we credit cash in bank for 450,000. So etong entry na to, we assume that the books are not yet closed as of, or the books, no, nung December 31, 2020 are not yet closed. Hindi pa siya closed, no? Hindi mo pa na zero out yung mga nominal accounts, no, mga income and expenses. Hindi mo pa sila na close. So that is why our entry is like this. So you simply debit sales and credit cash in bank, because again, ang entry dapat na cash in bank and sales should be recorded or should be reported nasa January 15, 2021. So those are our adjustments, no, for the additional information na meron tayo. The second requirement is mag-compute na tayo ng total amount of the cash and cash equivalent to be reported in your financial statement. No? So let us just itemize, or let us just analyze, no, the items listed or enumerated here. So, isa-isahin natin. So, una, yung cash in bank na 3 million. So, yung 3 million na cash in bank na yan, take note class, it is affected by this information sa baba. No? So, if you are to go back to our adjusting entries, yung 3 million na yan, no, it's either madadagdagan or mare-reduce siya by the amount of our adjustment. So, example, no, dito sa solution natin, yung 3 million mo na unadjusted balance, increase natin by 250,000 kasi nga per adjusting entry, no, yung undelivered check, binalik natin sa cash. So, mag-increase siya ng 250. Also, post-dated check, dinagdagan natin ng 100,000. And then, yung erroneous sales na record in 2020, dinideduct natin yung 450,000. So, yung updated or corrected amount of your cash and bank is 2,900,000. Okay, another item, going back to the list, another item is the time deposit, which is 30 days. So, since na-mention niya dito na 30 days, and since, no, this particular time deposit here can qualify as, or is qualified, no, to be considered as cash equivalent. So, yung 1 million na yan, isasama natin sa ating cash and cash equivalent na line item. Another is your money market placement due on June 30, 2021, which is 2 million. So, if you are going to recall our definition or our rules, no, in accounting for or in considering an item to be a cash equivalent, diba ang rule doon is dapat 3 months from the date of purchase to maturity date. So, ito siya. Ang due date nito ay June 30, 2021 pa man daw. So, meaning it is still 6 months, no, as of the reporting date. So, basically, this money market placement here cannot be classified or will not qualify as cash equivalent. So, hindi dapat isama yung 2 million na yan. So, kaya wala siya dito. Another is savings deposit in a closed bank. As we have mentioned, pag nasa closed bank, we will not include it as part of your cash and cash equivalents. It will be presented separately. Next is a sinking fund for bond payable due on December 30, 2022. So, that's 1,500,000 pesos. So, if you are going to check whether this sinking fund, ito bang 1.5 million dapat ay kasama or hindi. Sabi natin dapat ang classification ng sinking fund ay magdedepende sa classification ng related na liabilities. In this case, bonds payable. So, ano ba ang kaniyang ginawa? Okay, there's something wrong here. So, sabi niya dito, the sinking fund for bonds payable is due on June 30, 2022. So, let's just make a correction here. No? This should be 2021 para ma-align. So, this sinking fund for bonds payable, or this bonds payable here is due on December 30, 2021. So, our cutoff is December 31, 2020. So, from that date until June 30, 2021, 6 months na lang, no? So, meaning, yung bonds payable na to, magiging current liability na siya because it is payable na within the next 12 months na from the reporting date. So, if that's the case, since yung bonds payable natin magiging current liability na siya, yung sinking fund din natin magiging current na din. So, yung 1.5 million na yan, i-include natin, isasama natin doon sa cash and cash equivalent na caption. So, again, I made some correction because kapag 22 ito dito, if this is December 30, 2022, then this 1.5 million sinking fund here is considered as non-current pa. No? So, non-current siya. So, that's why we are trying to reconcile yung information na nasa problem at saka yung nasa solution. Okay. So, you have here na yan, no? Dito, June 30, 2021. Again, I'd like to emphasize na nakapag June 30, 2022 itong 1.5 million na to, dapat hindi kasama dito. So, this shall be deleted from the list of items to be reported as cash and cash equivalent kapag June 30, 2022 ito. Okay? So, another is yung Patikash fund. So, wala namang minention na information about Patikash fund. So, we just consider it kasi this is a cash fund for current purpose. So, yung 20,000 natin, i-report natin as part ng cash and cash equivalent. So, with that, ang ating total cash and cash equivalents will be 5,420,000. Okay? So, this is how you analyze the transactions or analyze items, decide whether to include it as part of cash and cash equivalent or not. So, familiarization of the terms is very important. So, dapat mag-practice na mag-solve ng problems para the more na maka-encounter ka ng terms na kasi in this case sa financial accounting maraming mga alien or mga unfamiliar terms na dapat you should understand kung ano yung nature nila para mas mapadali yung accounting natin. Okay, so number 3 requirement, you explain the presentation of the items excluded from the cash and cash equivalent. So una, ano yung in-exclude natin? Yung money market placement. Bakit nga ba? Kasi 'di ba from December 31 the reporting date until its maturity 6 months pa. So it will not qualify nga as cash and cash equivalent. So it will not qualify as highly liquid investment as its maturity is more than 3 months from the reporting date. So balikan lang natin class ha. Ang importante is ang date of purchase until the maturity date na dapat 3 months or less. The savings deposit in closed bank also is not part of your cash and cash equivalent because if you have a deposit in a closed bank or suffering from bankruptcy, it shall be measured at estimated recoverable amount, and in the absence of that amount, it shall be assumed as zero or no longer be recovered. So wala. That is not it is not included in the cash and cash equivalent. Also, I'd like to add na for this particular item, yung aside from the fact na you're going to present it or you're going to measure it at estimated recoverable amount, no? So, you also have to present it separately, no? Hindi siya kasama doon sa cash and cash equivalent. So, other assets na siya. Okay? So, that's the illustration. Next, another illustration here. Let me check. Kasi na, ano siya, na-distort yung mga, okay, yan. Better. So, this is the information given. So, you have your cash and bank current account, Patikash fund, all funds were replenished at year-end. Time deposit daw na 3 months and savings deposit na 1 million. So, meron siyang mga information na binigay here sa baba. Tapos, ang question niya, what amount or what total amount should be reported as cash and cash equivalents? So, isa-isahin natin na based on the given information. So, sabi niya, ang cash and bank dyan na 6 million, that includes 400,000 of compensating balance against short-term borrowing arrangement. So, take note that the compensating balance is legally restricted as to withdrawal. So, kung legally restricted siya as to withdrawal, that 400,000 there should be deducted from 6 million. So, that is why 6 million minus 400,000. So, the amount of your cash in bank, teka lang klasa, shall only be 5.6 million. Another is your Patikash fund. So, sabi niya dito, all funds were replenished at the end of the year. So, since na-replenish siya, no, so, the whole amount of 50,000 shall be included. Kasi it's a different story kapag hindi siya na-replenish. Pag sinabi natin na-replenish class, no, parang nabalik sa dating amount, no, say, ang nature kasi ng Patikash ay, di ba, say for example, nag-set up ka ng 50,000. So, during the accounting period, dyan ka kukuha ng mga pambabayad mo ng mga petty expenses. So, at the end of the accounting period, kung hindi siya na-replenish, meaning hindi na-refill no, yung amount na 50,000, yung mga hindi mo na-replenish na mga expenses should be recorded. So, if that's the case, kung walang replenishment pero merong mga petty cash expenses, ang mangyayari, yung petty cash fund na i-report natin should not be equal to the original petty cash na sinet up mo, but instead, magbabase ka doon kung magkano na lang talaga ang natira as at the end of the accounting period. So, it's good that in this case, na-replenish at the end of the year. So, the whole amount of 50,000 ay ating ipipick up as part of cash and cash equivalent. Another is time deposit na 3 months. So, since 3 months siya, ang term niya, so yung 2.5 billion na yan ay included na as part of our cash and cash equivalent as well as your savings deposit. So, since wala nang additional information, no, let me show you the total amount, no, or the solution. So, yung 5.6 plus 50 plus 2.5 plus 1 million. So, you'll have 9,150,000. So, these are the notes. No? Since the compensating balance is legally restricted, then it shall be excluded from the cash in bank. Another, na it will be deducted as it was part of the cash in bank balance. So, time deposit is included in the cash and cash equivalent since it will be due within 3 months from the reporting date. So, basically, kanang, since the fact na ingon siya dito nga ang time deposit is 3 months lang, that makes it na ma-qualify as cash equivalent. So far we are done already with so many information that we have discussed related to cash and cash equivalent. So at this point, let us proceed na to accounting for cash shortage or overage. So, di ba class, this is very common, no? Especially for cashiers. So those people are employees handling cash. So this is very usual, no? Yung mga collectors, mga tellers, for example, usual ni kaayo nga sana common kaayo ni or usual ra kay nila nga ma-encounter nga mga pahitabo kanang possible or the possibility of shortage or overage. So kano sa man na siya mahitabo. So this occurs when the cash count shows cash which is less than or more than the balance per book. Say for example, ang nasa record mo is 10,000 pero ang pag-account mo or pag-count mo ng cash mo nasa 9,500 lang. Sana wala ang 500. So there is a cash shortage. O baliktad naman, yung per record mo 10,000 pero pag count mo ng cash mo, meron kang 11,500 or meron kang 10,500. So merong excess or merong tinatawag na overage na 500 pesos. Now, ano ba mas okay? Cash shortage or cash overage? Actually, walang okay sa dalawa, no? Kasi pag dapat, no, ideally, kung ano ang nasa record, yun din dapat ang nasa actual, no, or on hand mo per cash count. So, whether it's cash shortage or cash overage, it's still bad because it reflects na hindi na perfect, no, nung cashier ay nung teller ay yung collector ang kanyang trabaho kasi supposedly equal yung record tsaka yung on hand mo. Okay? How do we account for the cash shortage? So kapag merong cash shortage, gagamit tayo ng account na cash short or over na account. This is just a temporary account class. Tapos pag ma-identify na kung example, no, yung liable talaga ng or it is really, no, because of the cashier, no, kung bakit merong shortage, yung cash short or over na account ay i-debit na lang or i-close na lang natin to receivable from Patikash or cashier, no, depende kung sino yung naka-incur ng shortage. In this case, you're assuming that the petty custodian or petty cash custodian yung naka-incur ng shortage. So if the petty cash custodian is held responsible for the shortage, then we debit the receivable from petty cashier. Kung hindi naman, if that custodian is not held responsible, then it will be charged to loss from cash shortage. No, ito sinolder ng company, ito chinarge siya empleyado. So depending on the policy of the company or the circumstances, no, or ang mga reason kung bakit merong shortage yung cashier. So kapag meron namang overage, take note pala class sa shortage, debit yun, no, merong cash short or over account na naka-debit. So, pag close natin siya, i-credit natin, tapos i-debit natin yung receivable from petty cashier or yung loss from cash shortage. Kapag meron namang overage, yung cash short or over na account ay ating i-credit. And then, kung hindi mahanap kung kanino talaga yung pera na yun, i-credit na lang to miscellaneous income. Kung walang mag-claim, no? Pero if it was really properly identified na that amount is the money of the cashier, then it will be close to payable to petty cashier. So again, this will still depend on the company policy because there are also, I know a company also, no, na ay companies na whether short or over, it will be charged to the employee. No? So, depende lang sa policy sa company. Okay? So, we're now in the last topic, no, for this particular lesson. We are down to accounting for petty cash fund. So, before we discuss, no, how do we account for the petty cash fund, let me discuss with you this impressed system. Ano ba itong impressed system na to? Baka ma-confuse kayo kasi meron ding sa accounting ng petty cash fund, meron sinasabi doon about impressed fund system. So that is, this impressed system here is different from that impressed fund system na method of accounting for petty cash fund. Okay? So ano ba yung impressed system? The impressed system is a system of control of cash. So meaning, some companies will implement this type of system for control purposes, for internal control purposes, no, para ma-ensure na ma-monitor nila yung cash nila. So in this system, no, it will require all cash receipts na should be deposited intact, and all cash disbursements should be made by means of check. However, lahat ng collection for the day should be deposited intact to the bank. So bawal yung gagamitin yung sales, no, yung cash collections mo, bawal gamitin pambili ng kung ano-ano. No, kasi it should be deposited intact to the bank and the next banking day. In terms of disbursement naman, dapat daw idaan lahat sa cheque. So yun yung impressed system, no? Bakit idadaan sa cheque? Para class, no, ma-monitor mo yung cash outflows mo. Kasi 'di ba, it will be reflected, your check issuances will be reflected also in your bank accounts. In that case, no, mas madali mong makita kung merong mga abnormal or mga unusual transactions. Kasi you can immediately check on your bank account. No, bakit merong ganitong amount na hindi naman ito authorized? No, bakit merong issuances ng check na to? So, it's more of monitoring, no? Mas mamamonitor mo yung cash in tsaka cash out ng company with the help of this impressed system. So, na-account mo, no, you're able to account for your cash and monitor your cash, no, for internal control purposes. So, there are occasions, sabi natin, diba, lahat ng disbursements dapat idaan sa cheque. Pero of course, that's not practical, no? There are really situations when the issuance of checks, no, becomes impractical, no, or inconvenient. Especially if the amount are very small. Say for example, yung palit lang ka og ice, 2 pesos, lisod pod, no, kay mo pod siyang isuhan og cheque, or mamiliti ka sa tricycle, no, pila nung G's, no, isuhan mo siya og cheque. So that will be inconvenient and impractical. So that, because of that, yung mga companies implementing impressed system, gagawa sila or magsa-set up sila ng petty cash fund. No? Ano yung petty cash fund? Yung petty cash fund is a fund set aside to pay for small expenses or mga petty expenses. No? So, yung amount ng petty cash fund na yan, magdedepende sa entity. So, depende sa company. So, may company na magsa-set up ng petty cash fund na 2,000 lang or 1,000 lang. Meron namang company na magsa-set up ng 50,000. So, it will depend on the need, no, of the company. So, depende kung gaano ba ka bilis, no, yung transactions niya, paano kadami yung mga petty cash na petty expenses nila na dapat nilang bayaran. So, depende siya. So, yun, no, we will be accounting for petty cash. How do we account for petty cash fund? Okay. So, there are 2 methods, no, of accounting for petty cash fund. One is the impressed fund system. The other one is the fluctuating fund system. So, I have here a table that would differentiate, no, nung dalawang system o dalawang accounting methods na to, given is particular transaction. So, for example, no, so may kalahian sa impressed fund system ug sa fluctuating fund system. So, una, when you establish the fund, so of course, pareha lang sila. So you just debit petty cash fund and you credit cash in bank. No? So the same also with your fluctuating fund system. Now, number 2, when there are now expenses, no, or when expenses are dispersed from the petty cash fund. By the way, class, yung setup usually nito, pag merong petty cash fund, meron talagang i-assign na petty cash custodian. So, siya yung hahawak no, ng pera. Tapos, pag merong mga babayaran, so, pupunta lang sa kanya. Tapos, merong petty cash voucher na fill upan yung gustong kumuha ng pera para pambayad no, for petty expenses. And then that particular petty cash custodian, meron din siyang mini-maintain na petty cash book. No? So, nandoon, no, parang meron siyang monitoring as to kano yung beginning balance, tapos pag merong mga disbursement, so i-record niya doon para ma-monitor niya kung magkano na lang amount nung natira. So, going back to the entries, so now, when expenses are dispersed from the petty cash fund, under the Impress system class, walang journal entry na gagawin. So, bakit, no? Ang gagawin lang ng petty cash custodian ay, yun, no, ikikip lang niya yung mga petty cash vouchers which are pre-numbered and signed. Signed ito, no? Signed by the persons nga nakumuha ng pera from the petty cash fund. So, tapos meron siyang tinatawag na petty cash journal, yung sabi ko na petty cash book or petty cash journal. So, the petty cash custodian will just record yung mga petty cash vouchers dito sa petty cash journal. So, wala pang formal na journal entry ang gagawin under the Impress system. Whereas, sa fluctuating fund system, so every time na meron kang babayaran, kaya nga ang tawag sa kanya fluctuating kasi from time to time, maiiba yung balance ng petty cash fund mo. No, kapag meron kang disbursement, maiiba siya. Kasi real time yung pag-record mo ng transaction. So, you debit various expenses and you credit petty cash fund. So, meaning, ito of course, depende no, kung ano yung binayaran mo. So, for example, nagbayad ka ng tubig, no? So, you debit utilities expense here, then you credit petty cash fund. So, etong entry na to, this will really be reflected in your books, no? In the books of the company. So that every time there is disbursement from petty cash fund, your petty cash fund account will also be affected. So, kaya ikukumpara mo dito sa impressed fund system, so kahit na nabawasan na yung pera, no, sa actual, nabawasan na yung pera, pero per record or per books or per record na, per ledger ng petty cash fund, hindi pa, or the same pa rin yung amount, based pa rin sa original. No, kasi every time na there is disbursement, hindi na muna siya magre-record doon talaga sa books ng company. Kundi, meron lang muna siyang mini-maintain na separate na petty cash journal. Okay? Now, number 3 na transaction, ito yung replenishment ng petty cash fund. Ano ba yung replenishment? So, di ba, for example, dito, marami ka ng disbursement. So, for example, your petty cash fund, the amount here is 10,000. So, depending again on the policy of the company, posible na mag-set up or meron silang policy na pag ang amount ng petty cash fund ay 1,000 na lang, so, dapat ay mag-replenish na. So, ibig sabihin, pag sinabi may replenish, dapat yung 1,000 na balance mo, dapat of course, dagdagan mo na ng amount, no? Para maging 10,000 ulit yung petty cash fund mo, yung actual na petty cash fund on hand mo. So, yun yung replenishment. So, para kang magre-refill, no, ng petty cash fund since naubos na pambayad ng mga petty expenses. Now, under impressed system, no, observe no, that dito, sa impressed fund system, only when you replenish the petty cash fund, no? Only then, no? Kung nag-replenish ka ng petty cash fund, doon lang or doon ka lang magre-record ng mga expenses na binayaran mo. And then your entry, take note, is cash in bank na diretso. Bakit? Kasi pag nag-replenish ka under the Impress system, pag na-replenish ka, of course, i-issue ka ng cheque ang petty cash custodian. No? Mag-i-issue ng cheque ang mag-i-issue ng cheque ang company in favor of the petty cash custodian para pang replenish sa kanyang petty cash fund. So, meaning, since there's check issuance, that is the reason why we are crediting cash in bank here. And we recognize the expenses that we have paid for. So, yun sa impressed fund system. Sa fluctuating class, no, tanawa daw, observe this one. Ang entry niya, pag-issue ng check sa petty cash custodian as replenishment. So, ang debit niya ay petty cash fund. Bakit? Kasi tapos naman siya na-recognize sa mga expenses. So, ang gagawin niya dito sa fluctuating system, isa-set up niya ulit yung petty cash fund para ang amount ng petty cash fund ay maging equal doon sa original niya na petty cash fund. So, given na hindi niya i-increase no, yung kanyang petty cash fund. And then, of course, kasi nga merong check issuance, then magka-credit tayo ng cash in bank. So, that is replenishment. No? So, basically, sa Impress system, only in this time, no, na mag-recognize tayo ng expenses. Sa fluctuating, parang sineset up mo lang ulit kung ano man yung nawala doon sa petty cash fund account mo. Kasi 'di ba dito real time siya. So sa record mo, say for example 9,000 lahat ng mga binayarang expenses. So yung record mo dito sa fluctuating system mo reflect na 1,000 na lang dyan yung petty cash fund. Whereas there is Impress system, as of here, even if the amount of your petty cash fund an actual on hand is 1,000 na lang, pero yung per record mo, yung petty cash fund mo ay 10,000 pa din. Pero, no, kasi hindi mo nga siya ginalaw noong nagbayad ka ng mga petty expenses. Or expenses coming from the petty cash fund. Okay? So, next number 4. Okay. This one is adjustment at the end of the accounting period for unreplenished petty cash expenses. So, this one is applicable lang kapag hindi nakapag-replenish no, yung petty cash custodian at the end of the accounting period. So, kasi 'di ba example kanina, 9,000 na yung total expenses no, na binayaran from the petty cash fund. Tapos at the end of the accounting period, nakalimutan ni cashier or ni petty cash custodian na mag-replenish. No, so, nakalimutan niya. So, ang mangyayari, since cut-off period na, say for example, December 31, 2020, so, ang natirang amount na lang sa petty cash fund niya ay 1,000. Kasi nga na-disperse na yung 9,000. So, since hindi nakapag-replenish, yung amount no, ng petty cash fund na 1,000, yun yung dapat ang mag-reflect talaga sa ating financial statements. So, ang gagawin, mag-a-adjust tayo, no? Gagawa tayo ng adjusting entry. And adjusting entry is to record the expenses na binayaran and then i-reflect natin yung pag-decrease ng petty cash fund no, because of the disbursements from the petty cash. So, yun sa Impress system. So, meron siyang note dito for convenience, no? Yung adjusting entry mo dito, no, we can reverse that at the beginning of the next accounting period. No, parang hindi na mapafollow yung sa accounting 1 natin na we can reverse the adjusting entry if tawag doon, if it is an accrual ba or deferral under income or expense method. Kasi nga, ang tinitingnan natin dito is yung convenience sa recording in the next accounting period. Under the fluctuating fund system class, wala tayong entry at the end of the accounting period. So, wala tayong adjustment na gagawin. Bakit? Kasi nga, we recorded already the petty cash expenses outright. So, yung petty cash fund natin per record is updated siya. No? So, kung magkano yung on hand, kung wala lang shortage or overage, yun din ang naasa record. No? Nag-reconcile yung record tsaka yung amount na actual na nandoon sa petty cash custodian. So, number 5, if you wish to increase your petty cash fund, so example, from 10,000, gawin niyang 15,000. So, dagdag lang tayo ng 5,000. The same also with the fluctuating system. Number 6, kapag naman i-reduce ang petty cash fund, kasi diba, nakita nila na sobra-sobra yung 10,000, so gawin lang natin 5,000. So, debit lang tayo ng cash in bank kasi isasauli natin sa general cash yung ating petty cash na 5,000 and then we credit petty cash fund. The same also with your fluctuating fund system. Okay, so to apply this, let us have the illustration. So, ito yung illustration niya kay Laborious Company. So, closed the accounts in June 30. So, ito yung mga transactions na nakita doon sa petty cash. So, yan May 2, nag-establish ng fund. So, what will be our entry for that? So, we have here, for May 2, pag-establish ng fund, so, you debit petty cash fund, credit ng cash in bank. So, the same lang from for both impressed fund system and fluctuating fund system. May 20, what happened? Sa May 20, magkaiba. Gawin natin 20 para mag-reconcile. Sa May 20, the fund is replenished and the petty cash items include the following. So, sabi niyo yung currencies and coins. Sabi niyo, ito na lang yung natira. Na 2,000 natira. Sa out of the 10,000, 2,000 na lang yung natira. So, ito yung mga binayaran. No? So, yung mga binayaran niya, postage, supplies, transportation, miscellaneous. So, i-add up mo ito lahat. 1,003, so 4, 5, 6, 5, 7, 8. So, total of 8,000. So, tama. Walang short or over. So, ano yung entry natin dyan? So, sa May 20, ito, replenishment naman ito. So, we debit yung mga expenses. Dinebit natin lahat. And then, we credit cash in bank na 8,000. So, the amount of the replenishment. So, that's under impressed fund system. Now, under fluctuating fund system, so take note na minention niya dito, every time you incur these expenses here, you record a decrease in petty cash fund. So, for example, here, ito siya, itong entries na to, most probably ginawa niya yan nung na-incur niya yung expense. So, not necessarily during the time na nag-replenish ng petty cash fund. So, kaya meron siya ditong note na this entry is recorded when incurred or as the expense were incurred. And then, during the replenishment, ito na lang yung entry niya. Debit ng petty cash fund, credit ng cash in bank. To recognize the replenishment. Now, pagdating ng June 30, ano bang nangyari? June 30, the fund daw was not replenished. So, the fund is composed of the following. So, saan naman coins and currency and coins. Ang nabili niya quarter is 6,000. Supplies, these are expenses na paid. So, 2, 3, 4. So, still, there's no shortage or overage. So, 4,000 ang total ng expense na kanyang binayaran. So, for June 30, ito yung entry natin for the adjustment. So, we debit the expenses, no? Ito. And then, we credit Patikash fund. So, take note under the impressed fund system as of December 30, yung balanse ng ating Patikash fund ay 4,000 na lang, no? So, take note 6,000. That's 10,000 minus 4,000. So, 6,000 na lang yung ating i-report as of June 30 na balanse ng Patikash fund, which reconciles doon sa on-hand talaga, no, na currencies and coins dito na 6,000 din. Okay? So, for the fluctuating fund system, so wala na tayong adjusting entry doon sa June 30 kasi we assume that itong mga entries na to na-recognize na, yung mga expenses na to na-recognize na sila when they were incurred. So, na-update na. Yung 10,000 niya, updated na to 6,000. Okay? So, pagdating ng July 1, so sabi doon, i-reverse natin yung entry natin ng June 30 for convenience, no? Pagdating ng July 1 or pagdating ng succeeding accounting period. So, you have here reverse lang natin, no? Baliktad lang. So, petty cash fund, credit, so i-debit natin. Supplies expense, the debit, yes, i-credit natin. Postage, saka transportation expense, i-credit natin. Of course, for fluctuating fund system, hindi siya affected. Kasi wala naman siya adjusting entry na i-reverse. Now, pagdating ng July 15, magre-replenish na naman siya and i-increase na yung fund to 15,000. Okay, so magkano na nga ba yung balanse? So, we have 6,000 na lang man yung natira, diba? So, you have here, okay. Now, take note na since hindi pa nakapag-replenish since June 30, this is the first time na nag-replenish siya, no? Mula noong June 30, so July 15 pa siya nakapag-replenish. So, ito na lang yung natira, 3,000. So, meron pa nagastos na niya ang 7,000. So, since ganun, check natin yung 3, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3,000 plus 3, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, that's a total of 7,000. So, wala ring shortage or overage. Kasi yung total, if you're going to add all of this will tally to 10,000 din, no? Yung original natin na balanse ng ating petty cash fund. So, again, if you have noticed, no, or if you have observed na itong mga amounts na to, no, please take note na ang mga amounts na to dito, yung 3.5, yung 1.5, itong mga amounts na to, class, this is a cumulative balance. So, meaning this includes already yung mga amount na nasa taas ng supplies na 2,000 na yan, kasama na yan sa 3,500. Yung postage dyan, kasama na sa 1.5. As well as yung transportation na 1,000, kasama na yan dyan sa 1,500. So, these are accumulated figures here. Itong mga expenses na to. Okay? So, this is the beauty of your reversing entry. No? Bakit? Kasi, diba, ano magiging effect? So, because we reversed our entry, no? Say, for example, imagine yung supplies expense mo, meron siyang credit na 2,000. Now, pag ikaw nag-replenish na, pagdating ng July 15, diba, meron kang supplies na naka-credit na 2,000. Tapos dito sa iyong replenishment na entry, nag-debit ka ng supplies expense na 3,500. Which is, no, very convenient, no? Hindi mo na sineparate kung magkano ba yung galing sa June 30, magkano ba yung galing sa July. Kasi when you do or nung nag-reversing entry ka, automatically, sineparate mo na yung June sa July nga mga amount. So, here, you can just simply debit all of the amounts, 351515500, but yung actual mo na i-report for the month of July ay yung ano lang talaga, yung net amount na. So, for example, yung for supplies, no, yung 2,000 pesos is good for June, no, or is applicable for June na expense. Sa July, no, 1,500 lang talaga yung applicable. Pero dito sa ating replenishment, dinebit na lang natin agad sa 3,500. Bakit? No? Kasi nga, sabi natin, kasi meron na tayong reversing entry, hindi ako makapag ng T account. Pero anyway, no? So, just imagine a T account, no? So, you have supplies expense. Meron ka ng credit because of your reversing entry na 2,000. Credit, 2,000. Na-imagine nyo. Tapos, after this entry, itong entry na to, supplies expense na 3,500, diba naka-debit yan? So, imagine a T account of supplies expense. Meron kang credit na 2,000. Meron kang debit na 3,500. So, if you're going to get the net amount, so the net amount of that is 1,500. So, that 1,500 is the amount of supplies expense applicable only for the month of July. So, hindi nakasama yung 2,000. So, automatically, because of your reversing entry, no, kasi ni-reverse mo yung adjustment mo noong June 30, noong July 1, nag-reversing entry ka. So, mas mapapadali yung recording mo dito sa July 15. No? So, if you have questions about that, no, please feel free to ask it, no, during our online session. For the fluctuating fund system, so, you look at fluctuating fund system. Dito sa July 1, of course, wala siyang reversing entry. So, nung nag-replenish na, no, actually, pag nag-replenish na, ito na lang dapat yung entry niya. Kaso lang, pinakita lang natin na prior to replenishment, lahat ng mga binayaran niya, no, out of the fund is credited already to the Patikash fund account. Na? So, kung titingnan natin dito, yung mga amounts na na-reflect sa fluctuating fund system, ito yung mga amounts talaga na applicable for the month of July na. Supplies expense at 1.5, as we have explained kanina. Then postage of 1.5, postage of 500, transportation of 500, and miscellaneous expense amounting to for a total of 3,000 pesos. So, ito, pag-issue ng cheque, magde-debit lang tayo ng petty cash fund and magka-credit tayo ng cash and bank, no, for the check issuance. Okay? So, I think that will be all, no? It's a very lengthy na video. I hope you learned something from this video. And I'll see you in our online class. Bye, class.